Check the description for the following discount codes. If you already watched my first review, then you can skip the whole next section and go to the timestamp where I'm doing the driving section again. Sim Hound, Adam specifically, took some feedback from that first review about the amount of movement in these upright sections. If you saw the first video, you'll see me tapping the wheel like this and the whole thing was wobbling like mad. And as you can see now, it's only barely moving. What they've done is added a brace across the bottom here, which is something a lot of you suggested in the comments. So great to see that's been taken on board. It comes now as standard with every Sim Hound cockpit. And if I physically try and push it around now, look, that is really very solid, especially for a £300 cockpit. So yeah, if you haven't seen the video, carry on watching now. If not, skip to the timestamp and we'll get to the driving part. Today we're building up the first sim racing chassis from Sim Hound, designed and manufactured here in the UK. I've already reviewed their gloves. They were a decent set of gloves. I know a lot of people have been waiting on the review of this cockpit because of its price point and the fact that it's aluminium profile. The price point's £295 in a basic colour, which I think is just black and silver plus delivery. Then you've got one of the sort of ready-made off-the-shelf colours, comes in at £330, so another £35. And then if you want a custom colour scheme, literally whatever you want within the available, colour palette choices that they have, and I think it's £350, so another £55. The one we have here today, some of you may well recognise this colour scheme, especially when I tell you what it's called in a minute. It's a rally theme, so you'll probably guess what it is. But yeah, so as far as this is smaller aluminium profile. The main lengths. The main lengths are 60mm wide by 30mm high, if you look at it that way. And compared to the larger stuff like what I've got over there on my GT Amiga Prime, it is noticeably smaller and it's noticeably lighter as well. The whole package arrived and I was like, oh, this feels really light for an aluminium profile cockpit. And this is what I'm keen to find out, how something like this, which is noticeably smaller dimensionally than what something like that is, how it actually performs and whether we need to be spending the sort of money you do for these larger ones, or whether something small like this, but with well thought out and well made bracketry to hold it all together, will be good enough. And this is quite important because a lot of these smaller, cheaper profile rigs that I've seen out there, both DIY and retail, instead of using custom-made steel brackets, they just use the normal 90-degree corner brackets to hold the upright sections in place and things like that. And that's not going to be the sturdiest. You're going to get some play side to side with that sort of scenario. So keen to see how this works. But let's just have a little closer. Let me show you the instructions first of all and what this edition is called. As you can see there, it's the Scooby edition, and I'm sure some of you will have guessed that, especially if you're into your rally. But let's just take a little look inside the instructions because they are really nicely laid out. You've got every part listed there, its size, its colour, so and this is colour specific to the version that you've bought, which is just a nice little touch. Everything's laid out pretty clearly. All the all these sort of custom brackets come with their T-nuts and bolts pre-installed as well, just making things that little bit easier. But yeah, as you go through, it's all colour. You're encouraged to measure your distances where you think you'll roughly want things, because being powder coated, you could of course scratch your paintwork, so to speak. So definitely take heed of that and measure things as well as you can, so you have to do as little adjustment as possible once you've got things loosely bolted together. But the instructions are nice. I will be using them to get the full Sim Hound experience, even though it's pretty logical how it goes together. Everything came packaged really well. It's in let me just grab a couple of bits here. Everything comes in cardboard boxes, obviously, but then everything is externally wrapped in quite thick bubble wrap. Again, this is to help protect that finish that you've paid for that you don't get on other cockpits. So it comes bubble wrapped, and once you remove the bubble wrap, it's then in like a cling film, I suppose you might say, with a label on each part. So you can't get it wrong, even though, you know, they're all very bespoke shapes. Shouldn't really be able to get it confused. But, you know, 2 layers of protection there, plus the box it come in. Great stuff to see. And this is what one of the powder coated brackets look like. Nice finish. And again, the pre-installed T-nuts there, just saving you a little bit of time and a little bit of messing around. And it is a nice finish, you know, it is a nice finish. I can't complain. I think these measured 3mm thick. And then, speaking of thicknesses, the pedal tray, which is pretty hefty, and again, it's got pre-installed T-nuts. And what's really good to see here is where this is slotted, it isn't just slotted, it's like a bunch of pre-drilled holes, as you can see. And what this means is, like if it was just a smooth slot, you could potentially get some slippage under load. If you were braking really hard, you know, the pedal tray could potentially slide. But because we've got a whole load of incremental holes drilled, there's absolutely no way this could slide under load, which is great. And this thing is heavy. I'm going to estimate, because I haven't got my scales with me, somewhere around 7 or 8 kilos. And this measured, I think it was just 4 or 5mm thick. Now, the only thing I will say is there's no bracing across the middle underneath here, that way or that way. So we are reliant entirely upon the rigidity of this sort of surface itself, this plate in the middle. Now, I can't say it feels, you know, it feels solid to stand on. And again, you know, not the best test in the world, but we'll see when I get some pedals on there and how it performs. And as you can see as well, it's pre-drilled and pre-slotted. These slots across the middle here are just nice smooth slots, but that isn't going to be a problem because you won't be applying, you know, lateral sort of pressure to your pedals, or if you do, it'll be very little, perhaps with a bit of heel and toe. It's going to be, you know, forwards pressure that you apply, so there's going to be no issues with stuff slipping there because of that. This is our wheel deck, again made of the same I think it's 4mm, yeah, when I measured it. Pre-drilled for the usual wheelbases, by the looks of it. We'll find out when I offer one up in a minute. And again, T-nuts and bolts already in place. So, I think that's probably everything I need to show you before I actually get to building it. Looked at the instructions, talked about the packaging. Oh, again, everything's really well labelled, like in like the biggest font you've ever seen, just in case you missed it. So there's your fittings and tools. And you know, you can see we've got some corner brackets in here. We've got some Allen keys. Actually, interestingly, I haven't opened this yet. These Allen keys don't look like your usual cheap-ass silver ones that we get from a lot of other manufacturers. Now, it doesn't, just because they're not silver, doesn't mean they're not cheap, but I'll find out when I use them, because some of you will know the typical included tools with a lot of things we get are not very good quality, and they'll chew very easily, just like cheap nuts and bolts will as well. So we'll experience a bit more of that as I get into it, and we've got lots of little end caps here as well. Again, everything is labelled in a super extra large font, so you can't miss what it is. But yeah, some Sim Hound stickers that I must say, and I always say this, I do like the Sim Hound logo. Something about that just ticks a box, presses my buttons, whatever it is, I like it. Anyway, enough waffle, let's get the cockpit built. I'm just midway through the build and I thought it was worth paying particular attention to the type of T-nuts that have been chosen here, because they make the install really, really easy. Normally with T-nuts you either slide them in the end of the channel on the profile and slide them down to where you want them, or you can kind of roll them in sideways. It can be a little bit fiddly. The ones that have been chosen here, let's get a close up. If you look, they have like a rounded edge there and a rounded edge there, and then the other corners are 90-degree square. What that means is you just slot this into the channel like that. You then back off the Allen bolt, which allows the T-nut to go deeper, or the other way, deeper into the channel. And then when you then turn it clockwise to do it up, this actually rotates. It can only rotate in one direction because of the squared off corners, locks in place, and you just do it up. So you literally slot it in, back off your screw, do your screw up, and that's it. It rotates around, locks itself in place. Makes it really, really quick and easy to install. And again, the fact that they're already pre-installed on the parts, it's literally just bosh, back off, wind up, done. Next one. Bosh, back off, wind up, done, and carry on. Really, really nice little touch there, I thought. Worth a mention. Here's the finished product, looking very much Scooby-esque, I would say. I really am. When I said to him, he asked me what sort of design I wanted. And I said, well, you know, I play a lot of dirt rally. So if we could have like a dirt rally theme, that'd be great. And he comes back to me and he said, oh, I've got an idea, Carl. He goes, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm sure you'll recognise it. And this is what we get, the Scooby edition Sim Hound aluminium profile cockpit. And I must say, I do like the look of it. It was an absolute pleasure to put together. It's taken me about 45 minutes start to finish, something like that. And that T-nut installation, where they're all every single one was pre-installed for every single part, by the way, literally all of them. I didn't have to, I've got a bag of M8 and M6 fittings here, and presumably these are for attaching, you know, your pedals and your wheels and what have you. So you've got different lengths, you've got more T-nuts in there, perfect. And we've got some leftover, I say leftover, we've got some additional Sim Hound livery, and these are actually magnetic, which I'll show you in a second. So should you not want them on your rig, you could put them on your fridge. Anyway, those T-nuts, every single one was pre-installed. You literally just grab the piece, push it against the profile, back it off, do it up. And that's literally it. It rotates, it locks itself in place. It's how all T-nuts should be. It made life so much easier, so much less fiddly and so much faster. Now, I've got to get my seat off my GT Amiga Titan to fit to the back and get my gear off of there and put it onto here. But I'm going to grab the camera and we'll do a little close-up now it's all assembled and just show you a couple of highlights that make this different from other smaller aluminium profile rigs. I must say I do think it looks really quite nice. Now some people obviously are not going to like this colour scheme. They might not even like the fact that you can have coloured rigs, and well, that's entirely a personal choice, and if you don't like them you don't have to buy one, do you? But for me, I like the Scooby theme. I think it's cool. Now the plastic end caps all fitted well and were nice and snug. Everything went together exactly as it should. The pedal tray feels pretty solid even without the bracing, as I mentioned earlier, so I think it's probably going to perform just fine. Everything went together well. As I say, all these T-nuts and bolts were pre-installed. Now what's cool is these are actually magnetic, so you can take them off just like that if you don't fancy them being there, or maybe you do fancy there, you can put them back on, or as I say, on your fridge, on your car, whatever you want. Now the pedal tray can be adjusted forwards and backwards, not only in the aluminium profile by undoing the T-nuts, but also those pre-drilled adjustment holes that I showed you earlier on in the video. And of course the vertical adjustment is done here using the slots in those upright sections. Now what makes, I did mention this earlier in the video, what makes this different to a lot of these smaller profile rigs is the use of these brackets like this, rather than just getting another corner bracket like you see there and putting one here and one here and one here and one here. Now they're fine for front to back sort of structural integrity, but not so much side to side, because you're relying purely on the T-nut in the slot to stop it moving side to side. What we've got here, you know, especially, I mean, the wheel deck doesn't even really need this much structural rigidity, because you're on your pedals, you're just pushing this way. You know, there is no side to side sort of wobble. So probably a little bit over-engineered more than anything for that particular one. But this one here, this is where it's, I think we're going to see a lot more upright rigidity than perhaps in some of the other smaller alley profile rigs. You know, we've got 4 bolts into T-slots here and another 4 there, and then the same on the inside. You know, so that not only can this not slot forwards and backwards, because we've got these two here, and of course the profile is flat on this profile, you know, it's going to be impossible. The 3mm steel we've got either side, which accumulates to being like 1 6mm piece of steel, you know, it's going to prevent anything in the way of side to side movement, or at least I would hope so. I mean, metal at the end of the day will flex and will bend if you give it enough force, but it's about how and if it moves under normal use. I'm sure if I was to go over there, grab the top of one of those uprights and bend the living crap out of it, I'd be able to make it flex. But that, of course, is not what you would do when you were in a normal driving situation. So I'm sure it's going to be fine. But let's get a seat and my DD1 and some pedals. There's no shifter mount with this. There are shifter mounts coming and all sorts of other additional accessories as well. But the one I have here is just the basic setup, you know, for people who perhaps don't use an H-pattern shifter and just like to use the paddles. For me, I'm going to try this out in dirt rally, just because rallying is very aggressive steering input. So if you're going to see wobble and flex in the upright sections, it's going to be from you know, rallying, at least in my opinion. More track-based sims where you're trying to be as smooth as possible, you're not being quite so aggressive on your steering inputs. So yeah, I'm going to get it all set up and we'll have a little play and see how she does. But so far, so good. I like it. So installing my seat, pedals and wheel was no ball ache. Everything bolted straight on. The only slight anomaly I had was that because of the size of the profile, all the bolts are M6 and T-nuts are M6. All the seats I've got have M8 holes for the bolts. So I had to put some washers under the head of the M6 nut. Otherwise they would have tightened up, but I think had I applied sort of a lot of force, they may have pulled through. It's an easy fix. You know, Sim Hound can just supply 4 washers to go with their M6 nuts for specific, M6 bolts for specifically bolting your seat down, and that's that sorted. Obviously, if you do have a seat that has M6 holes, you've got nothing to worry about, but all my GT Amiga seats are at M8, so that was all painless. Everything bolted on just fine. As far as sort of flex and rigidity goes now, the wheel deck has, this is solid. There's no flex in this wheel deck at all. I mean, I could probably break off this poor little Fanatic wheel if I wanted to. It's really very solid. Left to right is the same, and this is the thing in the previous video. When I tapped that before, there was massive wobble like this. There's still a tiny little bit, but I can really, I can hang off of it with my body weight in both directions, and there is only a very small amount of movement in those uprights. So this brace on the bottom here has done the job. That's perfect. The pedal tray, that thing is rock solid too. In fact, it's more solid than the one in my GT Amiga Prime. And whilst I don't notice any flex in the GT Amiga Prime pedal deck, this is definitely beefier, just to sort of use something that I can compare to. You could, I mean, I've got these Fanatic pedals on here. They're not the hardest to press, but there's nothing stopping me pressing it with all my strength, and there's just nothing. I mean, let's just be ridiculous here. Yeah, there's nothing. It doesn't move at all. The only thing I've noticed is a small amount of flex in this base piece here, but that's when I'm being stupid and literally putting all the strength I've got through that. You don't actually feel it, but I can just see it tip slightly on my carpet. And in fact, that does it less now. This brace is through there as well. In all honesty, you'll never notice, I don't think, any of it. It feels like a rock solid cockpit. So far so good, you know, a thorough recommendation, especially now this brace has been added to sort of eliminate that wobble that was at the top there. You know, if I really force it, look, yeah, I can move it a little bit, but that isn't how you drive. So, speaking of driving, let's do some driving and you can see how it all performs in use. I have had a quick go already and I've got no issues with it whatsoever. And at this price point, you know, it is aimed at CSLDD users, high-end belt-driven wheelbase users. It's not designed for super powerful direct drive stuff like my DD1, for example. Or not that that's super powerful, that's sort of a mid-range direct drive wheelbase really, isn't it? But it performs perfectly. Like, if this was my only cockpit, you know, in some colours of my choosing, then I would be more than happy with it. And being aluminium profile, you know, you've got the facility to bolt on all the bits and pieces that you want, accessories and add-ons. There's going to be, I believe, a range of accessories coming, monitor mounts and things like that. But I'm really pleased they added that brace off the feedback of the original review because it's made such a difference. I can't feel any movement as I'm racing. I mean, if you just pay attention there, I don't think you're going to see anything. You know, it's really sorted it right out. And I must say, playing with this CSLDD is still really nice as well. For an entry-level direct drive wheelbase, I think everyone that buys one's going to be happy. But yeah, big props to Adam at Sim Hound for acting quickly after my review and my findings and just, you know, getting that brace in place. As I say, it comes with every cockpit now. There's no additional cost to us. The price is still exactly the same. You'll have yourself a lovely little aluminium profile cockpit. It doesn't take up a huge amount of room either compared to the full size or bigger alley profile ones, which is important to some people. I'll be keen to see also what sort of colour schemes some of you lot come up with for your custom rigs. It's a shame you can't post pictures in the comments on these videos because it would be nice if you could put some pictures up of what you have done with yours, your colour choice. You know, Adam said you can literally have whatever you want, any design you like, so I bet there's going to be some really quite cool ones coming out of the Sim Hound factory. Whoop, way. Chatting away and not paying attention to what I'm doing. Anyway, that's probably enough gameplay. So you'll have seen whether that wobbled or moved or not. For me, this cockpit at 300 notes is now a strong recommendation. If you like the aluminium profile look, of course. If you're more of a tubular person, there's the 𝐒𝐤𝐦 Titan. Of course, you can't just bolt accessories to that because it's not alley profile, everything's tubular, there's no flat edges. But this is great. I think Adam's done a really good job over at Sim Hound. So there will be a link in the description, an affiliate link. And also don't forget they do, oh, I should have put my Sim Hound racing gloves on. I did in the previous video, I forgot to in this one. But yeah, they're decent as well. Anyway, enough of my waffle. The cockpit's good. For the money, you can't go wrong. The customization from the colour scheme and that is just an excellent idea. I really like that. And, you know, pedal deck, which is that one, not this one. Pedal deck is rock solid. Wheel deck is rock solid. The whole cockpit now is also rock solid. Absolutely no complaints at all. So thank you very much, Adam, for sending this over and also for making that alteration after the previous feedback about the uprights. And thank you guys, as always, for watching and take it easy.